Hi, in this lesson, we'll be looking at superclasses and subclasses. Let's go. Large programs are often using several different classes to model programs. For example, if we created a person class, what are some of the values that we would use? Feel free to pause the video and come up with a list. While your answers will vary, and there are many different variables we can use, let's look at name and birthday as some examples. We could say that a person has a name and a person has a birthday. This has a relationship takes on significance in our coding project. Values that have a has a relationship represent instance variables in our projects. So a person class might have name and birthday as two instance variables in the class. Another less common relationship is the is-a relationship. Is-a is used when one thing is a more specific version of another thing. As an example, think about the relationship of a student to a person. We cannot say that a student has a person, but we can say that a student is a person. A student is a more specific example of a person. A student is a person. It is important to note that this is not a symmetrical relationship. While we can say that every student is a person, we cannot say that every person is a student. The person class is a more general class, and the student class is a more specific class. This is a good chance to pause the video and brainstorm additional is-a relationships. Remember, an is-a relationship describes one thing being a more specific example of another. Take a few minutes. Here are some examples, but there are many more. Remember, these are not symmetrical relationships. You can say that every dog is an animal, but every animal is not a dog. Let's think back to our student and person classes. What are some common characteristics that both a student and a person would have in common? What are some examples of things that only apply to a student? Every person and every student will have a name and a birthday, so we can retrieve the name and calculate their age. Only students will have a grade and a GPA, so those methods will be specific to them. As another example, let's think about a worker class. We can say that a worker is a person, and they have a name and birthday just like a student or any other person. A worker also will have a job title and a salary, but that is specific to the worker class. Not every person is a worker, so not every person would have a job title or salary. When we have an is-a relationship, we can create a superclass. The superclass is developed to put common attributes and behaviors of related classes into a single class. This allows us to reuse code between the superclass and all the subclasses. We will also see later that it plays a role in polymorphism. All workers, students, and people have names and birthdays. We can put these in a superclass. We would not want to have to repeat these variables and related methods in each class, so we are able to put them in the superclass and share them with the subclasses. The subclasses inherit the public attributes and behaviors from the superclass. Attributes and behaviors that are specific to one particular class will go in the subclass. A superclass object does not have access to attributes and behaviors of the subclass class. In this case, a student object will have access to all the attributes and behaviors of both the student class and the person class, but the person object will only have access to the attributes and behaviors of the person class. To create a superclass-subclass relationship, we use the keyword extends followed by the name of the superclass. This will create the subclass. No modifications are needed to the superclass. It is important to note that a subclass can only extend one superclass. Let's take a look at an actual implementation. Notice that the superclass looks the same as any other class that we have been using. As we drill down into the subclass, we will start to notice some differences. We will explore more of the details in upcoming lessons, but for now it is important to note that the class header uses the keyword extends to extend the person superclass. Also, take note that we will still pass in values for name and birthday when we create the student, but these values and the associated methods are not found in the student class. They actually get passed to the person superclass. For the client of the student class, the integration with the superclass becomes seamless. A student object is created with 4 parameters, and the user has access to the getName and getGrade method. Behind the scenes, we could see that the name and birthday are stored as a person object, and the grade and GPA are stored as student objects. While a class can only extend one class, it can extend a class that has already been extended. In this case, a high school student object will have access to all the attributes and behaviors of the high school student class, the student class, and the person class. As our programs become more complicated, oftentimes we look to create a hierarchy of classes that allow us to reuse common attributes and behaviors. When 2 classes share an is-a relationship, we can create the superclass-subclass relationship by having the subclass extend the superclass. Subclasses can only extend one superclass. Now that you've learned about super and subclasses, let's get some practice using them in the editor.